Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Chase with Jace. And football season's right around the corner, so we got LSU football coming around. Labor Day weekend on a Monday, actually on a Sunday. Rematch LSU and Florida State from last year was at the Superdome. This year is going to be a top 10 matchup in Orlando. So we're super excited for that, and it's going to be a really entertaining game for sure. We're looking forward to see what the Tigers can do against the top 10 opponent early in the season, number 5 versus number 8 matchup. But really what we're going to come in here today, what we're going to talk about is just really the fall. So I got the opportunity to really go to a lot of the LSU practices and really see what they can do. So really excited for that opportunity. Just seeing what LSU was able to do in the fall. We really appreciate Brian Kelly and everything that he was able to do and giving us access and going to practice every single day because, I mean, Brian Kelly didn't have to do that, right? So for him to give us access to LSU, go to all the practices. Now, there were some times we can only shoot footage for about 15 minutes, but that's totally understandable. I mean, they don't want a lot of their secrets getting out, but we were able to go out there and then really see practices, see who are some guys that really emerged from the pack. Some guys are battling for position battles. So we got a lot of access really behind the scenes for that. So appreciate Coach Brian Kelly and then really the whole staff for really letting us have that access. So now is an opportunity for me to talk about some of those winners from fall camp, give my thoughts on the fall scrimmage that was this past Saturday. But before I do all of that, make sure to like and subscribe, right? So like our channel, subscribe to our channel. You can also go to our website, gridironfootballusa.com is also the website. So make sure to check us out there. We have all kinds of content. You go on our website, we have practice reports. We're going to have position previews coming up for LSU. And then we'll have a whole lot of content on the high school side of things. You just saw, if you go on our website right now, got a bunch of Media Day coverage from our Gridiron Football Media Day. If you haven't got a chance to check that out, definitely encourage you to go and check that out. Yep, a lot of our content. We're going to have a lot of school spotlights, Diamond in the Roughs. We got really a lot of content across the United States. We're going to have different areas that we'll cover as well. Yeah, make sure to follow us. Make sure to follow us on all our platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're pretty much all over the place. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate Miss Melissa. I know she just commented just now. So happy for Mr. Andy and his wife. Yeah, that's great. So Mr. Andy and Kristen have another child, so that's great. Looking forward to see another member of the Bryson family running around. So especially around the office. So that's going to be great to see. If you have a comment like what Miss Melissa just commented in the comment section, please do. If you have any questions or anything going on about LSU, I'm here. So please sure to share it out. If there's any other LSU football fans that would like this content, make sure to share it out too. So if you have any question at all, feel free to interact with us. I'll make sure to answer any questions that y'all have coming up about the LSU Tigers this fall. So yeah, basically my observations. First of all, we're going to kind of recap the LSU fall scrimmage. So the LSU fall scrimmage was this past Saturday in Tiger Stadium. It was actually our last opportunity we got to see the Tigers until they play against Florida State. So really a couple weeks, and really the practice started off, I think it was like around 10 o'clock in the morning. We got there. We were able to watch the practice in Tiger Stadium. And it was like it took a while for the scrimmage to actually get going. So just looking at it, man, we had about 2 hours, I would have to say, of practice. It felt like a normal practice. Everything that we've seen through a normal practice is what we saw for about 2 hours. And we were trying to figure out when the actual scrimmage was going to start. So it felt like we were out there for a whole game. But towards the end, we actually got to see a scrimmage coming up. So the scrimmage, Brian Kelly talked to the media with us probably about, when he met with the media, that they're going to run about a 60 to 70 play scrimmage, and it turned out it was only about 43 play scrimmage, about 42, 43 plays, which makes a lot of sense because they just went through a 2 hour practice. So of course, the number of plays were going to diminish from what we really expected coming out. So it was about 43 plays or so. And really going back, you can actually go and read the scrimmage recap from this Saturday. You can go to our website. Once again, another shout out to our website, gridironfootballusa.com. And really, if you go back to it, the biggest two winners, there was a big winner on the offensive side of the football, and there was a big winner on the defensive side of the football, just looking back at that scrimmage. And the biggest winner on the offensive side of the football had to have been Caleb Jackson. So Caleb Jackson is really had an opportunity to show what he can do because they're loaded at that position. They got about 8 running backs. It's like 8 deep at that position. So with a couple guys being out, there are about 3 guys limited that have been limited the last couple of days in practice. Those guys being Logan Diggs, Armani Goodwin, and Josh Williams. They've all been limited in practice. So it gives an opportunity for guys like Caleb Jackson to show what they can do. Well, to tell you what, I mean, as far as talent goes and upside, probably the Tigers' most talented running backs have to be the freshmen. It has to be Trey Holly and Caleb Jackson. But, I mean, there's so many people in that room. We don't know if they want a redshirt this year or what's the situation with both those 2 freshmen. But one guy that stood out was Caleb Jackson. So Caleb Jackson got a lot of work with the second team. Because of 3 running backs being out, you really saw Noah Cain. Noah Cain was with the first team. You saw a little bit of Trey Bradford working with the first team as well. And you got to see John Emery got some reps as well. But really, Caleb Jackson was the guy that stole the show. We were looking for somebody throughout fall practice because each running backs were getting a lot of opportunities, a lot of carries, but it's a running back by committee. We're trying to figure out which running backs are going to stick out. And Caleb Jackson, man, he gave his nominee for sticking out, for standing out. On the first touchdown that he had, it was an 18-yard touchdown scamper. And you look at Caleb Jackson, he does not look like your typical freshman. He does not. He looks like a linebacker out there running the football. And he made one cut in the backfield. There was a defender, had a chance to hit him, makes one cut, then goes north and south, and he finishes it off with a powerful touchdown run. Actually lost his helmet in the process when he was trying to bulldoze a couple of defenders. So that was his first, oh my. LSU's got something in Caleb Jackson. The second one was actually a 75-yard touchdown screen caught by Caleb Jackson from Garrett Nussmeier. And Caleb Jackson made one guy miss, another guy miss, and then just nobody can catch him. He's 200. Keep in mind, he's 6'2", 225, 230 pounds running like that. He's just out racing guys. So Caleb Jackson had an MVP performance in the fall scrimmage. And with all the options, all the veterans that we've seen at LSU throughout fall camp, we did not think that Caleb Jackson was going to be the main option we talk about, but with that performance he had, it puts him in the conversation. So, also, another guy that really stood out with his performance was Zy Alexander. Zy Alexander is on the defensive side of the football. He plays cornerback for the Tigers. He's going to be a starting cornerback for LSU. I got a chance to cover Zy plenty of times when I was calling Southeastern games for Southeastern, and he was making plays. He had one-handed grabs. He had interceptions. He's 6'3", 180 pounds, has great physicality, can attack the football, great ball skills. He played quarterback at Warville High School back in his playing days, so he knows he's very smart, has a high football IQ. But a lot of the question marks heading into the fall were about the secondary, just because you have a lot of new faces. I mean, you know what you got in Greg Brooks and Major Burns. You know what you got in those two. But the cornerbacks, they're all going to be brand new. So those are really all brand new faces from the transfer portal. And so somebody has to emerge, and Zy Alexander has been pretty much the most consistent guy in practice. If you just look back and look, every day he was out there with the ones, and then we saw him in the fall scrimmage, and guess who he had to cover? He had to cover Malik Neighbors, and Malik Neighbors has been just a monster in fall. Every time they throw it up to him, I think we've seen Malik Neighbors make at least one circus catch every day we're out there in practice. And we all know what Malik can do. He's a preseason All-American. But for Zai to have that type of performance in the fall scrimmage was very, very impressive. He went up against Malik Neighbors, had a PBU, had a forced fumble. So he on Mason Taylor. So he made a good lick on Mason Taylor, forced a fumble, and recover it. We do have a question, and appreciate Cameron for asking the question here. And if y'all have any other questions as well for us for Gridiron Football, please chat and chime in. We love your questions about the LSU Tigers. Moving on. So does Caleb Jackson get any run this year just from that performance, or because of the depth he gets redshirted and maybe just plays against Grambling, Army, etc.? Great question, Cameron. So my response for Caleb for that question, I see a similar type of role if you go back. Remember Jeremy Hill. So Jeremy Hill, a couple years ago, he came in as a freshman, right? And he came in late in the game. If you go back and look, that was like the 2012 South Carolina game. That was the first game Jeremy Hill said, hey, I'm here and I'm here to stay. He came in late in that game, if you remember, when LSU was wearing out South Carolina. And boom, he hits the home run. He has a long touchdown run. So that is a concern with just there's so many running backs out there. But if they can figure out a way, if they can redshirt Trey Holly, I figure Trey Holly is a guy that they're probably going to redshirt this year. But if you can find a way to get Caleb Jackson on the field and be that guy in the fourth quarter that can be the sledgehammer, I don't see him starting this year. But I do see him being a guy that finishes games, a guy that can hit the home run just like Jeremy Hill did. I mean, defenses don't want to tackle somebody that's 230 pounds in the fourth quarter when it's late in football games. So if you get a guy like Caleb Jackson in there to wear down defenses, that's what he can do. We'll see him play against Grambling, Army, those teams for sure. But that's the biggest question mark. And if I were LSU, I would just be careful. Like, I would try to redshirt Caleb Jackson this year just because you just have so many backs. I mean, you just look Logan Diggs, you got Noah Kane, John Emery, Trey Bradford, Josh Williams. The list goes really on and on about how many running backs you really have. So if I was LSU, I would just make sure to redshirt him, but give him like the number of games at max where he can go out there and perform for you. So if that answers your question, Cameron, I think LSU does redshirt Caleb Jackson, but he's going to play against the 2 or 3 games LSU should expect to win, right? Like the Gramblings, the Armies, those types. But I wouldn't be surprised you sneak him in for another 1 or 2 SEC games and for him to keep his red shirt. So it would not be surprising for me if they do redshirt Caleb Jackson. But, I mean, it's just all we can do in the scrimmage. He's very capable of what he can do. Brian Kelly still thinks there's some things for him to learn, but once he does get the chance to really learn some more of the nuances with the position, I think he's going to be ready to roll. And keep in mind, last year, his senior year in high school at Liberty, he missed really the whole season. So because of injury. He got hurt in the first game of the year against Southern Lab. I got a chance to see that game and cover that game last year. But he's a guy that probably has the most upside. So Caleb Jackson really wowed everybody with his performance. I already told you about Zai Alexander. He forced a fumble, had a PBU. Those are some of the top performers of that fall scrimmage. Everybody wants to know about how the quarterbacks did. Jaden Daniels, he just went in there. He did his normal thing. You pretty much know what you got in your quarterbacks, right? You know what you got in Jaden Daniels. You know what you got in Garrett Nussmeier. Jaden Daniels, he had early on, the defense won some of the battles, but he came and led a touchdown drive. He threw a touchdown pass to Noah Kane. Looked pretty well right there on that drive. So he did a lot of really good things on that touchdown drive, and he still has the ability to make plays with his legs. So you know what he's going to do. Jaden definitely has the arm. We'll see how many more deep shots he's going to take, hopefully more than last year. But he's going he's not going to turn the ball over. That's just who he is, right? He's going to dink and dunk. He's going to look at his progressions. He's going to make the smart play. And then when the progression's not there, when the receivers aren't there, you know what he's going to do. He's going to take it and he's going to run. He's going to use his legs. There was a 4th down and 7 situation in the scrimmage, and the defenders got sucked in, and you know what he did? He just tucked in and run. He made a smart play. He got picked up the 1st down. You know what you're going to get in Jaden Daniels. I think he is going to be more aggressive throwing the football down the field just because he's been having that success pretty much every day in practice, seeing him against those wide receivers. He's been pretty dynamic. The receivers have been pretty dynamic when we've seen them out there with Jaden Daniels. Garrett Nussmeier, we have no question about him throwing the football deep because he is a gunslinger. You know that from Garrett Nussmeier for what he was able to do. So you know he's going to take the deep shot. He's got these receivers. I feel like him and Chris Hilton have built a really good rapport over the fall, and that's going to be a special combination to watch out when we look in 2024. I really think Garrett Nussmeier and Chris Hilton are really going to be clicking. But you got 2 quarterbacks. LSU, if something happens to Jaden Daniels, you know what you got in Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier can come in and not lose a beat for you. Yeah, sure, you have to tweak the offense a little bit because Garrett definitely doesn't have the legs or the running ability that Jaden Daniels has. But you can tweak some things in the RPO game where he can make it like a more pass-heavy offense with Garrett Nussmeier and still be an effective offense too. So both quarterbacks led touchdown drives. Even though I think Nussmeier threw about 113 yards in that scrimmage, 75 of them went to that screen pass to Caleb Jackson. But I feel like both quarterbacks looked good there. An interesting note I really thought about from the scrimmage was Sage Ryan. Sage Ryan played cornerback and actually started at cornerback in the fall scrimmage. So I thought that was pretty interesting because we didn't really get a lot of opportunity to see Sage Ryan play at one of the starting cornerback roles. So we usually seen him in nickel in the past, but it's not safety, but he's playing cornerback. Brian Kelly actually likes him at that role. He did suffer a scare in the fall scrimmage, so he went to go and tackle, I believe it was Mason Taylor, I think it was, and he injured his shoulder in the process. But good news, he missed the entire rest of the fall scrimmage, but the good news for the Tigers is that Brian Kelly talked with us yesterday and said that Sage Ryan was back practicing with the team. So that is really good news for the LSU Tigers. So Sage Ryan actually looked pretty good while he was out there. Andre Sam, you've seen him, what he can do in the secondary, the transfer from East State. He's been a guy that they put at safety along with Major Burns. They put Greg Brooks in the nickel position, and we've seen a lot of things with that. I think they really like Andre Sam there. But overall in the spring, really offensively, Jaylen Brown had a really nice play. He had a 20-yard reception. He made a move on Deuce Chestnut, who's a Syracuse transfer, who's playing at one of those cornerback positions, and made a big play there. So that was a play of note. And really, there wasn't a lot of things going on in the scrimmage part of it because there's only about 40 plays. So there's really only so much you can really see. So Miss Melissa, so we got a couple of things from Miss Melissa. Appreciate you chiming in, Miss Melissa. So Jada has a fellowship at Grambling. She's there for the next year, still working towards her master's. So that's great that we can help Jada in her role and just how she grows. And wish nothing but the best of luck to Jada. And I know she had a great time, and I know we hopefully taught her a lot of things here at Gridiron Football. She also asked, are the Tigers getting new uniforms this season? Haven't really heard anything about that. I mean, as far as like any alternate uniforms or alternate unis, anything like that. I think it'd be good to see. I mean, it helps. I feel like if you have those alternate uniforms, it helps really the whole program, right? It helps recruiting, especially if you're convincing a lot of 17, 18-year-old 4- or 5-star recruits because they love the unis. That's really a whole part of the recruiting process. But nothing that I've really seen yet as far as any alternate uniforms or anything. But good question, Miss Melissa. If you have any more questions, feel free to chime in. I know Cameron asked a question about Caleb Jackson. He asked if he thinks that if I think that he's going to get a lot of playing time this year or he's going to get redshirted. I just think if it was any other year, basically to wrap up Cameron's question from earlier, if it was any other year, he would probably be in the starting rotation. But since there's so many running backs, and you're probably not going to use all of them, and you also factor in Jaden because Jaden's going to take off and run a whole lot too. I just don't think there's really a role for him this year. But moving forward, Caleb Jackson's going to be one of your two guys running the football. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities in the 4 or 5 games that he's going to play before they redshirt him. But I think that's what I really see with Caleb Jackson. But nothing too much going on the scrimmage. We saw Aaron Anderson get a couple punt return opportunities too, so that was pretty new as well. And he looked pretty good. He looked pretty smooth out there, returning punts and returning kicks. I would have to say that. I think he's going to be your starting punt returner. Kick returner, you have a couple guys rotating right there. I mean, you had Aaron returning kicks, but you also had Noah Kane was getting some looks. The freshman receivers, Jalen Brown, Kyle Parker, he was getting some reps there. And that's another thing. LSU doesn't lack receivers. That's another thing we definitely noticed throughout the fall, if we haven't noticed that already. You just see really early in the scrimmage, it was worrisome because the wide receivers were dominating the DBs at LSU. But it was a lot of one-on-one drills. So when you got those one-on-one drills, a lot of that, and you're using the whole field at your disposal, it really favors a lot of the wide receivers. So we didn't really try to overreact too much to it. And really, if the receivers didn't win those matchups, I think I'd be more worried about the receivers. But the receivers did make a lot of plays. I think the 3 most consistent receivers from fall camp that I've seen had to been your number one guy, Malik Neighbors. He's made catches, plays after plays, impressive plays every day throughout practice. Chris Hilton. Keep an eye out for Chris Hilton. He had himself a great fall. Really made a great report with Garrett Nussmeier. Really made a lot of plays there. And then the third one, Kyron Lacy. Kyron Lacy had a great spring, and I think he really carried on with a great fall. So those are 3 receivers that stuck out. But the freshman receivers all had shown flashes, right? So you have basically Shelton Sampson. You have Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown made a lot of plays as well. You look as well, you have Jalen Brown, Kyle Parker. So a lot of those, even Kai Prean made a lot of plays. So there's a lot of receivers that throw the football to, and it's gonna be a lot of. I'm sure the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach, Joe Sloan, Mike Denbrock, Brian Kelly. I know they're very excited for what they can really see with those receivers. There's one more note I also wanted to mention about the scrimmage, and I won't get into it yet, but just keep an eye on this in case y'all haven't got a chance to really keep an eye on it yet. And that's Zalance Hurd. So Zalance Hurd was getting starting reps in the fall scrimmage at right tackle. So your starting line looked like Charles Turner at center, at left guard Garrett Dellinger, at left tackle Will Campbell, right guard. They put Emory Jones from right tackle to right guard. So that is another thing to keep an eye on because I don't think they're going to start off like that against Florida State. I think your starting 5 is what you saw last year with Miles Frazier at right guard and Emory Jones at right tackle. But like you saw with Emory Jones, remember Emory Jones got his first start around Mississippi State. That was his first start. It would not surprise me by Mississippi State, by the 3rd or 4th game of the year, you see Zalance Hurd at right tackle and you see Emory Jones, which is actually his more natural position at right guard. Keep an eye on that. Another question from Cameron. Appreciate Cameron for asking some questions here today. If y'all have any LSU questions, please shoot them out. We would love to answer some LSU questions for you. Cameron wants to know, how do you see Aaron Anderson fitting into the offense? Is he more of a special teams guy this year? For Cameron, that's a good question. I mean, Aaron Anderson, we all know what he's going to do on special teams. He is going to be your punt returner. He's going to be your kick returner. In that area, LSU is going to be massively improved in that area. Remember last year, that was a struggle. First of all, LSU was trying to find a guy that can actually catch the punch rival. and then find a guy that can make plays. And that was just a struggle all last year to find that guy. Now you got that guy, Aaron Anderson. He's looked comfortable catching those punts, and you know what he can do with it. I mean, he is as shifty as there is across the entire country. So I'm very excited to see what Aaron Anderson does. Now he's going to be an X factor on special teams. On offense, he is a guy that Denbrock, that Kelly, they're going to experiment a whole lot with. So he's going to get some jet sweeps. He's going to get some screens. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure they get, number one, the ball in his hands. It's really interesting to see him in practice because you have all those 6'3" receivers, 6'2" receivers.
Once it gets cooler.
All those 6'2" receivers, all those 6'3" receivers as well. But it was just a great way to see him in the offense and seeing what he can do with the offense. And I think they're going to do jet sweeps. They're going to do screens. They're going to do short passes. They're going to treat him like Tyreek Hill. That's what type of player that Aaron Anderson is. So he's going to make sure – they're going to make sure they're going to give him the ball in his hands. I think he has a role in this offense, and I think he's going to do a lot of things with the ball in his hands. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. And I think that he will have a big role in this offense. They're going to try to do whatever he can because he's a different type of receiver, right? He's not like Malik Neighbors. He's not like Brian Thomas. He's not like Kyron Lacy. He's not 6'3". He's going to be your 5'10", 5'11", shifty guy in the slot. They're going to find ways to give him the football and put the football in his hands. So to answer your question, I know I rambled on a little bit, Cameron, but to answer your question there, I see Aaron Anderson having a big role in this offense. I'm very high on him, so I know he's going to have a really big season as well. And he's going to do a lot with the football in his hands. Yeah, he is going to have a really big role in this offense, no doubt about that. So we have Graybert. He also commented here, Predator. Oh, I love it. It's not really a question, but it's just really a comment. Predator, an organism that lives by preying on other organisms. 2, a person or group that victimizes or exploits others for gain. Definition, Harold Perkins. That's it. That's a perfect definition there, Graybert. So Harold Perkins, I'm excited to see what he does, man. So Harold Perkins is just a force to be reckoned with. And they really experiment a lot with what he can do, whether it's on offense. I mean, not offense, but whether it's on defense. We put him in the middle of the defense. We put him on the outside. He has a lot of versatility. That's what they're trying to work with Harold Perkins. They're going to put him in the middle of the defense. They're going to put him on the outside. So Matt House, they've really done a good job of trying to really grow his game and make sure he takes the next level in that talent. So he's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that his game grows and he becomes a more complete linebacker. And it's scary because we saw Harold Perkins around just really show flashes at the beginning, like Mississippi State. He showed some flashes. We thought we'd see more from him at Tennessee. Didn't get a chance to play a whole lot in Tennessee. But it seemed like around when the Ole Miss game came up, that's when we saw more and more of Harold Perkins. And you saw what he was able to do against Bryce Young in Alabama. And then obviously everybody knows what he did in the Arkansas game. He pretty much took over that whole game of 4.5 sacks. I mean, he was a quarterback's worst nightmare. And he was tracking down guys, quarterbacks that have track speed. Like Malik Hornsby was playing quarterback last year for Arkansas. He was tracking him down like nothing. So, and he's got track speed. But Malik Neighbors, everybody has high expectations for, not Malik Neighbors, Harold Perkins. But they both have high expectations. But Harold Perkins, everybody has a lot of high expectations for him to take the next step, and I think he will because they're going to be creative in how they use Harold Perkins. And I think what helps him even more is that he will have a counterpart that will help him too, Omar Spades. He's going to take a lot of that pressure off of Harold Perkins as well. I really like that linebacker duo. I would probably stack that linebacker duo as really as good as there is out there in the entire country. So Harold Perkins, he takes the 0 off his jersey. He comes from a 40 to a 4. So looking forward to see what number 4 does. He should be expected to have another All-American type year, as he is a preseason All-American. Should have another All-American season heading to his sophomore year. So I'm going to go with, unless y'all have some more questions, feel free to chime in if y'all do. But before we end really the show here today and talking about LSU, just have to say we have the Football Huddle newsletter that's going to be coming up pretty soon. So this is it. This was actually our last Football Huddle right here. We had Ricky Collins, who was a quarterback at LSU, quarterback at Woodlawn High School. He's doing a lot of really good things at LSU. We got all kinds of coverage here. So this is like a whole newsletter right here. So that is actually going to be coming up. We'll have another Football Huddle newsletter coming up pretty soon. We'll have an LSU preview, and we'll have some lot of great features and a lot of high school products that y'all should be keeping an eye on. So keep your eye on this in the mail coming out, because it is. We'll send a newsletter out to pretty much the whole Baton Rouge area. We'll actually have a digital newsletter as well. We have a digital magazine coming up. So keep an eye on this. This is the Football Huddle. Make sure you keep an eye on this on your mailbox. So a lot of football content right there. Y'all going to really enjoy that. So I have to give that plug in there. Should be a lot of great features. I'm looking forward to see what the new issue of the Football Huddle is going to look like. We'll have a whole season preview as well for LSU, and kind of give our thoughts on what LSU will do in 2023. I'm going to end the show giving and I'm going to have a big article on it on our website at gridironfootballusa.com. So I'm going to give about 5 of the 10 guys. There's about 10 guys that really stood out to me in fall camp. I'm going to give you 5 names. I'm going to give you like a sneak preview in what I think, or the 10 guys that really stood out to me in fall camp, just seeing them. The biggest winners from fall camp who really benefited from another fall. I'm going to give you about 5 of them. In order to find out what the other 5 are, you're just going to have to read our article on the website, gridironfootballusa.com. So here's a little sneak peek. So the first one is Zy Alexander. He's the first guy I mentioned. And you can go back and look at the article I wrote about the scrimmage. Obviously, him and Caleb Jackson were the 2 standouts for me in that scrimmage. But I even asked Brian Kelly this question yesterday. We got a chance to talk with the media. I asked him what has made him really stand out as far as making that transition, because this is a hard transition to do. You come from the FCS, you come from Southeastern, so all of a sudden you're practicing against Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas every day in practice. So what's that transition been like? And Kelly basically says it's been a smooth transition for him. I mean, he's long, he's 6'3", he's 180 pounds, he's a veteran player, got a couple years in college that's really helped him out. And I think that has really helped him. Playing quarterback in high school at Lordville, that has really helped him. And not only he's got great ball skills, I mean, he's set a program record at Southeastern for interceptions, but he's not afraid to put his nose down there and get down and dirty with it, right? Because Brian Kelly that was the first thing that impressed him about him, because he's not afraid to tackle. He's not afraid to be physical. And we saw that when he forced a fumble on Mason Taylor. I think he's been your best cornerback. He's been your best guy out there at cornerback. So he should be one of the starting quarterbacks that you'll see out there against Florida State. And I think he's really had a great fall and has really benefited from having a great fall. So that is one of them. The second guy is Kyron Lacey. Kyron Lacey is the second guy that's really stood out to me. I just feel like last year there were a lot of negatives with Kyron Lacey. Everybody was talking about the drops. He had a drop that should have been a touchdown against Texas A&M last year in that game. But I think he's just been motivated. You can really see it. You saw that in the spring. He had some highlight plays in the spring game. And he's just really carried that on. It carried that momentum from the spring. He was one of the top spring performers for the Tigers. And has really carried on that momentum towards the fall. And has had a great fall camp. I'm really excited to see what Kyron can do. He's put himself in the starting lineup. He's part of the 3 starting receivers that we've seen over and over again, along with Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Kyron Lacey, he's been a big possession receiver, and has had a lot of touchdown catches in the red zone. So he's going to be a big red zone target for Jaden Daniels when we see him out there. Now, a different wide receiver that I think has had the best fall camp besides Malik Neighbors. I think he's right behind Malik Neighbors for having the best fall camp, and that is Chris Hilton. Chris Hilton has made so many plays during the fall. He's him and Garrett Nussmeier. There was one scrimmage, I think he had 2 touchdown catches. He's had some deep touchdown catches as well in fall practice. Actually, the picture you see right here, he's doing his best Jimmy Graham impersonation right there, trying to duck on the goalpost. So that's a great picture there. But that's what he was doing pretty much all fall. We know what he can do. We know the speed he brings to the table, the world-class speed he brings to the table. But for him to stay consistent is really injuries. That's really been the biggest problem for Chris Hilton. It has been the injuries, but he's been consistent. Brian Kelly said that. He's been consistent. He's been catching passes. He's not dropping anything. He's just been consistent in his work. And really, this has been a huge offseason. It was a big offseason for Chris Hilton to prove that he still got it. Remember, he was a very highly recruited player. He was even more highly recruited than like Brian Thomas and a lot of guys coming in. Malik Neighbors, he was more highly recruited than them. So great offseason for Chris Hilton, and this is going to be something that he can build upon and help him really have a great later half of his LSU career. And I think he's going him and just keep an eye for next year for Garrett Nussmeier and Chris Hilton. That's going to be a special connection. Ashton Stamps, he's the fourth guy I want to mention. Ashton Stamps was probably the biggest surprise that we've seen through fall camp. Just because he's a freshman, I even had an article with like the top newcomers to expect, and unfortunately, I didn't put Ashton Stamps in that list, but he's proven me wrong. Ashton Stamps has really risen up the depth chart, really in the middle of fall camp. We've really seen him working with the 2s and then sometimes working with the 1s. But he's done a really good job. He's been solid. You know, he's made a couple PBUs. He's been consistent. We haven't really seen him get beat that bad that often. So he's really been consistent, and it's really hard to do when you're playing against the talent of receivers. I mean, LSU's receivers are probably right there with Ohio State as far as how deep and how talented they really are. Probably 1 through 8, 1 through 9. So he's been really good no matter who's matched up against him. Ashton Stamps is a product from Rummel, comes from a great football program, and he's just done his really best in order to put his name out there. And really, he's took advantage of a lot of situations, right, with the situation with Denver Harris, right? Denver Harris is dealing with some personal things. He came back with the football team, was with the 3rd team in the fall scrimmage. And then also J.K. Johnson going down early. I think those 2 things, the cornerback room is really thin, so somebody had to emerge, and Ashton Stamps one of those names that we didn't really expect going into fall camp, but he's really benefited from having a really great fall camp. So Ashton Stamps has been one of the biggest winners, in my opinion, from fall camp. And then I think we have one more. Go back and look. Yep, we do. So we have one more, and it's the obvious. I just mentioned him a bunch of times throughout the show. Caleb Jackson. Caleb Jackson, he's actually been pretty quiet, I would have to say. I mean, he stood out physically to us, but he hasn't been getting a lot of reps because there's so many running backs. But with running backs being limited in the fall scrimmage, that's given opportunities for Caleb Jackson to get in and get a lot of work, and he took advantage of it. So I showed you, and he's really on this list because of the fall scrimmage he had with the 18-yard touchdown run, which I thought was more impressive than the 75-yard touchdown catch he had. But it shows you that 75-yard touchdown catch shows you the breakaway speed that he possesses. Remember, he really got his name out there when he was playing football for Liberty. Before he was playing football for Liberty, he got his name out there for running track because he defeated Le'Veon Moss, who is a running back for Texas A&M now. And Le'Veon Moss is pretty fast if you haven't come to notice that. But he beat him in track. And that's what got his name out there in the first place. So really, Caleb Jackson showed just what he can be, all the physical tools. And like what Brian Kelly said, if he can work on some of the more nuances of the position, boy, watch out for Caleb Jackson this year. That's all I gotta say. So those are half of the names that I was really high on. So if you want to find out what the other 5 names were, make sure to go to our website later today, GridironFootballUSA.com. Appreciate Miss Melissa, appreciate Cameron, appreciate Graybird for all chiming in with some questions. We'll be back as well next week. So this is our first show of the fall. So next week we're going to talk about Florida State. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. And Brian Kelly said yesterday that around, not today, but tomorrow and Friday is when they're going to start shifting their focus on the Seminoles. So he told us that yesterday in front of the media. But next week, it's going to be game week. So we're going to have to be talking about LSU and Florida State. We'll try to get a couple guests as well coming in and talk about the Tigers, see what they think about that Florida State matchup. But hopefully all of y'all enjoyed the show, the live stream. Appreciate everybody that's tuned in and watched. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share it out. Share out our show as well. We're all on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to put up a lot more YouTube shorts, a lot more content for that as well. That's something new we're trying to do at Gridiron Football. But until then, the most efficient way to keep up with us is just to go on our website every single day. And that's the website that's right above me, behind me, and it's www.gridironfootballusa.com. And then last thing, once again, keep an eye on the newsletter, the Football Huddle. That'll be coming in to your mailbox pretty soon. If not, I'm sure we'll put the newsletter as digital as well, gridironfootballusa.com. We'll have a lot of exciting things in this issue. It's probably coming up pretty soon. We'll have an LSU season preview and so many more high school spotlights too that will be in the newsletter. And we'll have a lot more high school spotlights and recruit profiles, a lot of great stuff at Gridiron Football. We come next week. We'll have our Player of the Week show in 2 weeks. We're going to have the Football Huddle show. We'll bring that back. So we got a lot of great shows for you on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel in order to keep up with all of it. Well, appreciate y'all guys. Appreciate y'all chiming in. And the next week we'll get, this is the first show that we've done since the spring. So we've been a little rusty in a lot of areas, but we'll make sure that we'll next week be a much smoother show. But it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to the football season, looking for another year covering the LSU Tigers. And then each and every week we'll come in and we'll talk about what's going on with those Bayou Bengals on the Chase with Jace. Have yourself a good Wednesday. Make sure to keep up with everything Gridiron Football. We'll go to a lot of high school games this weekend as well. Make sure to keep all of it. It's all football all the time here on GridironFootballUSA.com. I'm Jace LeJeune saying so long. Hope you have yourself a good day. Go Tigers. And you've just been finished watching The Chase with Jace.